we move forward into the world of AI and certainly shifting markets and demand, the one thing that everybody really needs to be cognizant of is branding. Okay. And I talk about branding, and branding and position go hand in hand. It's not so much your job, your title, where you went to school at that defines your value. It's what you're doing now and what are some of the problems you solve.
Welcome to today's episode of The Power Shift, where doctors are doing some really great, bold things and developing their careers in industry so they can make the best impact in the world that they see fit for their patients, for their values and their mission, and everything beyond that. And as you know, we're all about enabling you to get there faster. And I love a great collaboration. And so I'm really, really happy to introduce Christine Ong, who you may already know about, coming from the pharma world. So as you know, pharma is one of the really popular routes for doctors when considering other opportunities. Pharma's been around for a very long time, very influential in medicine, and hugely competitive. So I'm really excited to introduce Christine Ong to our community, who is a pharmacist-turned-strategist, who is basically on a mission to help medical professionals break into not only pharma, but in industry with her company, Talmedica. So she has an extensive level of experience in industry in the pharma world, clinical R&D, medical affairs, executive leadership, a whole bunch of stuff we're going to get into. But what I'm really excited about is how Christine has also worked with doctors and pharmacists and other people who are developing their careers in industry and beyond, and how both of us, we see similar things. And so it's really just to discuss and highlight what are the challenges that clinicians face in this journey, and also looking ahead as to how we can best prepare ourselves for the changes in industry to stay competitive and get to those opportunities where we have the greatest impact, basically. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Abeyna. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity and the opportunity to speak with your audience. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I think long time coming, as you know, it's one of those things where on LinkedIn and it's like, oh, you're really interesting. I want to follow you. And then you put out some really great posts and it's like, oh, that's so cool. And like, I totally agree with that. And I was like, oh, why don't we just get on the podcast and we'll have a chat. So thank you so much for joining. So first question, like, how did you get into this business? Like what actually first sparked your own interest in actually helping clinicians to really build impactful careers in industry?
Yeah, no, what a great question. So I'll tell you, I have a very long career in pharma and biotech, and I spent over 20 years. First half of my career was in clinical R&D, preclinical and clinical R&D, before I got into medical affairs. So the last 3 years has been an enormous change for me, and that's when I started Talmedica. Okay, and so what prompted me starting Talmedica was essentially based on what I've seen. There's a lot of people who are frustrated with their careers. And it's not just clinicians or medical providers trying to break into the industry, but as well as people who are trying to level up in their careers, because as we know, it's a very competitive market. And I think what we've been taught or told, when we start doing our doctorate degrees is, here's the path, you're good at it, we're knowledge workers, and you follow a certain ladder, if you will. And that unfortunately carries on throughout the entire career. So we have this mindset of just climbing that ladder. But these days, that's no longer viable. Okay. And because for one, there are so many opportunities in the industry right now. And being boxed into a particular rule is not something that I think anybody should stay. So one of my goals for putting together Talmedica was to really expand people's horizon so that they don't feel stuck on a role that maybe they've outgrown, and really expand that horizon into other potential areas within the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things that stood out to me based on what you've said. The ladder. That career ladder, us professionals, us qualification junkies are all on, right? And it's like we can only see the ladder and we're always going to the next rung and the next rung and the next rung. And that's accelerate spurred on by like the quest for knowledge, knowledge being like the key currency here. What is
Yeah.
the value of knowledge these days?
You know what? It's evolving. It is
Yes, tell me more.
changing so fast, and I mean, we hear about AI all the time, right? So
Hmm.
I think a lot of us who think knowledge is everything, right? There's going to be a shift. I see that shift happening now. If AI can deliver faster, they can process information faster, then what how do we position ourselves and how do we keep ourselves relevant for what the future may hold? So a lot of things will be automated soon, right? And a lot of this information, even if you go to conferences, my gosh, they record everything, and then afterwards you can just go and AI and say, "Hey AI, can you please summarize what was discussed?" I mean, that's quick. So it's changing so rapidly, and this is particularly true for a lot of people in the pharmaceutical industry where, knowledge supposedly is currency, but I think that's changing so rapidly now. There has to be more than just simply, I know X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I'm seeing. And the challenge with that is that a lot of professionals, doctors, pharmacists, they're losing their identity as a result of that because at the end of the day, we were hired and paid for our knowledge and our ability to implement that knowledge and put it into practice, right? And I find the challenge that a lot of doctors have these days is that they're worried that AI is going to, well, actually, because all of this rhetoric is going on and like everyone like Elon Musk is saying AI is going to replace doctors. Um, and at the end of the day, AI will replace, I believe AI will, if doctors don't know how to reposition themselves and how to identify like the bit of us, the parts of us that actually cannot be replicated by technology
Uh,
or done by another clinician, for example, quite easily. And
yeah,
honestly, I think this is a great opportunity to redefine where is our value. Like every several like 50 100 years you have different professions that face the same challenge. It's like, actually, are you still relevant? Right, like this
yeah,
is a great opportunity, and like this is why I think both of us are in that market, because it's like, okay, this is what's like, as my friend says, this is the miners' strike, isn't it?
yeah,
From back in the day, when miners were losing their job. Same thing is happening, say, for example, here in the UK with doctors, but this is an opportunity. This is why whenever I see any crisis, I always see an opportunity. I'm one of those people. But yeah, exactly that. Like, because knowledge is no longer that high currency piece anymore. But what would you say is a higher currency, especially like now and looking forward? Like, what is needed that can still be leveraged and practiced and stand out with when developing these careers?
yeah, yeah. So I think, everything you said, I completely agree. One thing that many people fail to realize is, we have our own brands. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When we train at school, we get our titles, MDs, pharmacists, we identify, right? That's our identity. That becomes our identity for a lot of people. And then we start working, then that particular role also becomes our identity. But I would like to challenge people that that is not our identity. That is
Mm-hmm.
part of it, right? And so I think as we move forward into the world of AI and certainly shifting markets and demand, the one thing that everybody really needs to be cognizant of is branding. Okay. And I talk about branding, and branding and position go hand in hand. It's not so much your job, your title, where you went to school at that defines your value. It's what you're doing now and what are some of the problems you solve. I think as as higher level people, if you will, right? We're highly educated. We tend to lean on the titles, the degrees, and rightfully so because we work so hard for these things,
Yeah,
thousands
years,
of
decades.
dollars, right? But
You gotta hold on to that stuff.
but I think we need to shift a little bit into more of what problems do I solve? What
Yeah,
problems can I solve? And that is a shift that everybody needs to start thinking now. It's not so much I had this role before, I had this title before, or I had this degree or this experience, but the market demands a whole new level of skill set. And so
absolutely.
to be very aware of what it is that we can help others to problems to solve.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely that. I mean, I was actually this morning talking to I speak to loads of doctors all the time, but this morning it just reminded me, I always get the question, and you probably get the same question, where like people come to you, so I'm a respiratory physician, and what kind of jobs are available out there for me?
Yes. Oh, yes, yes. Those are questions. And, I can empathize. I can relate, right?
I would have
If
said the same thing a long time ago. I would have been exactly the same question.
Yeah. And, I've asked the same questions too as I
Yeah.
was, in early in my career. But I think, and because there's no guidance,
No,
right?
no.
And right now I'm actually glad that we're starting to see a lot of career coaching. And I think we really need to make that happen because just because we have our degrees, we spent years, we are highly educated. If anything, we need more of that because we spent way too much time learning about information and forgetting that hey, this is only a piece of who we are. It's not
Yeah.
the entire piece. And so it's so important. And so as I mentioned earlier, it tends to resonate on, what is my next identity, right? And most people try to attach that to a particular role or job title,
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah,
need,
no, no, absolutely. Because that's what we've been conditioned to believe that our identity is our job.
yes,
Like
that's
you
our
meet someone
value,
and they're
right?
like, oh, so what do you do? And it's like, well,
Yes,
my job. That's who I am. And it's like, no, you're not, you know?
yes,
But
yes,
that's the conditioning that we've all been through. And again, like similarly, like we take that whole like what problems do you solve? And like who are you beyond that label that you've been given just because you've done that qualification and you've sat in this company for how many years? And people don't know.
yes,
I don't know, because like as you said, you just don't spend any time getting to know yourself because I mean, as a doctor, and we see this a lot with like professionals in general, exam, degree, exam, it doesn't stop. Exam, degree, qualification, tick box. And then you're conditioned to believe, okay, to get to the next level, I need another one of those. And I need
yes,
another one of those. Do you
yeah.
see
And
the same
it's
pattern?
almost this never ending climb.
Mm,
Everybody's on this vertical one path, right? You look to the left, you look to the right, and you see what others are doing, and you just follow a
do the
similar
same thing.
suit.
Yeah.
But what if, you're part of, what if you explore other area? Because that's exactly what I did, right? Well, that's exactly what I did. I was a pharmacist. A recent grad, and I realized, oh my gosh, I do not want to be a pharmacist. And I did my residency. I mean, I did the whole training, and I realized, wow, well, that was a bit of a to learn. I don't know if I can really do this. And so I had to force myself to explore, like, what can I do with this degree? Because
Yeah.
now I'm buried in debt. Like, I have to work, but I can't even bring myself to step into a hospital or forget retail. I'm not gonna retail. And then I was thinking academics. I just graduated. I can't possibly go back to school. That's, socially to me,
Again.
I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
so I
Yeah, yeah.
had to really force myself to be creative and really think outside of that box. And that's how I ended up landing in this small biotech. I was the only clinician. PharmD in this, and everybody else has PhDs, right? And they're all, we didn't even have a product. We have, we're working on compounds, for screening compounds and identifying clinical candidates. So that's where I ended up landing. But
Hmm.
it ended up such a boon for me because that really opened up a whole new world.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I started my first job, everyone's looking at me like, "Well, how did you get here? Aren't you a pharmacist? Like how are you here?" Right? So I have to explain that whole story, and it's a long, well, it's not really long, but it's one of those, even for others who are all scientists, they're like, how did you get here? Right? And at some point I was their lead, I was their manager, and they're like, I didn't know pharmacists can do all these things that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
Mm.
well, yeah, it's
But
it's how you,
the reality is, it wasn't about the pharmacist. It was about you,
exactly, yes,
you as a person, like the courage, the mindset, the like, this is not for me. I need to explore and find what is, and then
yes,
like presenting yourself and then creating value around you. So it's not just about that
yes,
degree you did, it's
yes.
about
It's
who you are and the
learning,
value you bring.
yeah, it's learning how to apply yourself. I
Yeah,
think one thing we for sure, we are all very capable. Okay. We
yeah.
have the we have the all the knowledge we need and all the experience we need. Okay. I think once we finish school, right, and get, that experience, we don't really need anymore. What we need to do is continue building, right? And look and even look within ourselves, like what is it that I want? What kind of life do I want to lead? And these are
Hmm.
really important questions, having that clarity, right? And sometimes it's hard to find that clarity when you're just kind of like, who do I talk to? Who do I lean to? Because you ask somebody, it's like saying you ask a GI doctor, hey doc, what do you think is my problem? They'll respond with a GI solution. Right? You ask a surgeon, they'll give you from a
Yeah,
surgical.
that's that. Yeah, 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 yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
what we need is guidance, right?
yeah.
Now, here are a few things to just really open up that mindset. And I think you have the same program. I mean, my program does precisely that. It's, we're not, my philosophy is we have all of the experience that we need. What we
Hmm.
need to identify is what is it that the problems that we solve, what is the
Yeah,
value that we bring? And that is the
yeah,
clarity that everybody needs. Okay, we all have
yeah.
value to bring, but we need clarity and we need focus.
Absolutely. Clarity and focus is such an important part of this. And as we were saying, it's the time that you need to give yourself to get to that point, regardless of where you are in your career. I've seen it in like medical students, I've seen it in people who are retired. Like one of our doctors who actually at retirement level came on the program with one idea and then within a few months ended up getting like clinical director of AI role. Like, yeah, completely unrelated. Really happy with the result. But a lot of that was because of the people he was spending more of his time with and the wins that he'd seen in our program. And again, it's like that mindset shift that takes time, but it's as a result of who you spend your time with. As you were saying, like if you take advice from people who aren't doing what you're going to do, you're going to get a certain level of advice, which isn't
Yep,
about your North Star. And so it's
exactly.
about it is the time that you spend with those people and that like ongoing exposure that's key. Because you see people that come in and they're like cool and they leave and then they're like shift back, right? Because that's herd mentality that you'd put a really great post on LinkedIn about not that long ago that I saw. That I was like, yes, she's gonna.
Yeah, no, it's so true because I mean, I'm sure you see it on LinkedIn all the time. How do
Yeah,
I become an MSL? It's like MSL, MSL. Well, the people that they're also asking are MSLs. They are some of them are medical, MSL recruiters. Well, what do you think they're gonna say? Yeah, MSL's great. They're not gonna tell you don't, right? That's the type of response. So you have to be very careful on who you ask
yeah,
advice with. And this is one thing that I haven't posted yet, but it's something, when you start thinking about these things, you realize, oh yeah, people ask for advice, right? Advice is a strategic, forward thinking What should I do? It's like an action-oriented thing. People
Yeah.
say, hey, give me advice. But what people really mean and what they really need is feedback. Okay. Feedback means, kind of looking deeper, looking back where you've been, what you've
Mm.
done. And out of that, then you can get a strategic advice on how to move forward. And so the superficial, I'm sure you get this all the time too. Can you give me feedback on my CV? Right? What do you think on my LinkedIn? Can you give me some feedback? Well, it's hard. What they really mean is advice. Can you give me a strategic advice on how to make this better? Or how
Well,
do I
do you have
think?
any thoughts on this? Like kind of a
Yeah.
generic, and unlike you, like we've taught our fellows how to ask actual questions because it's like you're clever people. Just be very specific with your ask, and then we can help you,
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly
That's
that.
and that's the problem, right? When people ask for feedback when it's really advice that they're seeking
Yeah.
on how to position themselves, right? Like a CV is
Mhm.
a marketing material. It's nothing else, right? It's meant to get an interview, right? You develop a
Yeah.
CV, it's meant to get an interview and kind of help you think through how to position yourself.
Yeah, it's a
That's what
positioning
it
tool.
is.
It's a tool, isn't it? It's a tool like everything else.
Yes, yes. So it's
Um,
not a 5 minute scan through of a document when especially if you don't know the person. It's
yeah,
hard
yeah,
to provide that feedback, and when they do get feedback they think it's a real strategic advice when really it's very superficial. Have
yeah.
ChatGPT do that. You don't need to pay anybody else to do that.
We honestly like. I was got to the point where we don't focus any time on CV because, I mean, obviously when you're applying for pharma roles, but even like some of the doctors we've helped get into pharma, it hasn't been with their CV. They
Mhm.
haven't got in because of their CV. It's been all the other things that we've been talking about. And then the
Exactly.
CV is like the last thing that you kind of formally have to do to actually apply for the role, which
Yes,
is like
cool.
5% or like 2% of the actual process.
Exactly. But you see a lot of people obsess over their
Stressing
CV,
over it. Yeah.
obsess over ATS. How do I overcome
Yeah.
ATS? And I'm thinking, even if you triple that, optimize your CV and optimize that, make it more competitive, like with the ATS, you're looking at what's still less than 10% probability of getting an interview, right?
Absolutely.
Because in general, when you apply online, it's less than 3%. That's not even a
Absolutely.
strategy. That's
Absolutely.
yeah, that's spinning your
Absolutely.
wheels.
So, I mean, because one of my questions is like, what's the biggest mistakes you see clinicians make, particularly in building careers in pharma or like moving? We've kind of covered it, pharma, biotech, or health tech. Like, what would you say, like the top one that you're like, everyone does this? What would you say that is?
Thinking that they are qualified for a number of roles. That
Tell me more.
yeah, they think that being qualified is enough to be competitive, right?
Hmm.
But the market is so competitive now. For every job opening, there are hundreds of applicants that we know of online. If you just go on LinkedIn, you'll see it, right? There's hundreds. We don't know what that looks like internally, right? There are internal applicants as well. They're not going to apply on LinkedIn or Indeed.
Yeah,
That's
especially for big pharma, right?
Yeah,
Like,
for
you know,
big pharma especially. And so
yeah,
you're looking at hundreds of applicants. So if the mindset is, hey, I fit this role, I'm qualified, you're already behind, right? The mindset needs to be, how can I solve this company's problem, right? It
yeah,
needs to be a value driver of
value driven.
solve
Hmm.
that problem, right? And that's how you also get clarity, because if you ask yourself this and you're not really sure, you can't come up with any specific clarity or specific areas, examples, then you have to reflect and think, is this the right rule?
Absolutely, absolutely,
Is
and
this the right rule?
exactly that. And again, it's a mindset shift because it's like, can I fit into this? It's more like, does this fit into your life goals and the value that you want to provide in the world? And that's
Yeah,
like mind blown for a lot of people. It's like, what?
it sounds so simple,
Paid
but
for that?
people come to me and it's like, how do I become a medical writer? Right? How do I get into psychom? And I was like, well, show me, some of the pieces that you've done, right? And they're like, well, you know what? I haven't really written anything. And I was like, well, I mean, you can always start, but you're starting now, likely, think about the competitors, like who you're competing with. They have a
Mhm.
portfolio. So you may be qualified because of your degree, your knowledge, your intellect, but are you competitive? Right? That's the question. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's a really important one.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is that competition, and it's just going up. It's just going up, and that's not going to stop anytime soon. I know that. So, we talk about positioning quite a lot, and marketing and packaging, and all of these things are like just unknown lingo to a lot of medical professionals. So, what advice would you give to a doctor or clinician who is? I see this all the time. Like you probably see this all the time. You've got someone who is like super qualified in leadership, highly celebrated. I've seen doctors with honors, right? And
Mhm.
are struggling. They're struggling to really communicate their value commercially. So, what steps would you take to really help them unlock that? Because yeah, I see this all the time. It really saddens my heart when I see it as well. But it's
Oh,
it's
it's
it's a
tough.
real reminder of like the lack of insight and self-value that we're able to communicate and articulate as professionals. Again, not something that we were taught.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, this is a really important question. This is something that I actually teach and coach and workshop on, okay, within my program. And that
Yeah.
is we have to think outside of our control. So when
Yeah.
we think about our impact, right? Most people will write down on their CV or even think mentally, okay, what is the impact? Most of the time they look within their reach. So what does that sound like? It's, I counsel patients, I developed this. It's very direct. Okay. But you have to think beyond just your direct impact. You have to think beyond that. So indirect impact as in so you did X, Y, and Z, but what does that mean at an organizational level? What does that mean from a department level, right? So you may and think about the audience too, like who you impacted. So you may have had a lot of impact on patients, great patient outcomes. You can talk about that, but go beyond that. What has been the impact for the department, the team, right? And maybe even outside the team, maybe other collaborators, et cetera, et cetera. So it needs to be more on a the impact needs to be thought of from a macro level, at a business level, right? Not simply, here's my role, here's my impact of what I can see within my reach, but really think beyond that. Uh,
Yeah, and a lot of doctors we struggle, don't we? Like a lot of clinicians struggle because we've never really had to look outside of what's around us. And then when you're looking at systems, you're looking at organizations, you're looking beyond that. That's like again like alien territory. And then we see this again where it's like, right, I don't know business, I need to go into industry, I'll just do an MBA, and then that will solve the problem.
that I I see that a lot, right? Where people go back for an MBA and then they finish it, they pay
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, they pay
round of
like the
thousands
mortgage.
and
Yeah,
thousands,
hundreds of
and then
thousands.
they're like, wow,
Yeah, they're like, so what do I do with this then? Literally.
and they're still, I really think that and I think there are publications on this, there's a diminishing return
Yeah,
when it comes to education. I think you reach a certain level.
yeah,
And then, after years of experience, there is a diminishing return. You can use, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think education is very valuable, but it depends on what your goal is after you've had your main degree. If you've reached the doctorate level, then you get, another certification, another degree. It's more of I don't know if that really carries any weight in terms of really attracting those opportunities, because at the end of the day you're going to be in front of a hiring manager and they're thinking, how can you help us?
yeah. How can we help us solve the problem?
Yeah, you're not gonna say I just got my MBA and therefore I have a business
Yeah.
acumen.
No,
That's
no one cares about that. Yeah, and like and again, like the feedback we get from employers is that people that have MBA don't have that real world experience in business,
and that's part of the
which is
problem,
way
right?
more valuable than the
Mhm.
theory. And obviously doing an MBA is great for networking as well. There's like a huge amount of value in that. But it's like one of those like other kind of academic traps. So whenever I say like you're considering MBA, like do it with your eyes open and be very clear on what your ROI is and how you're going to leverage it,
Exactly.
leverage being key. But if you can't leverage what you have now, how are you going to leverage your MBA?
Exactly. It's not really going to help, right?
Mhm.
And so, but you're absolutely right. You need to be absolutely clear on what the specific goals are for going back to school.
Yeah.
And I've coached several people, but okay, they decided they want to do it. Fine.
Yeah.
They ended up doing a master's in clinical development because they want to
Hmm.
get into clinical trials. And
Hmm.
I told them, why don't you just try to get some experience?
Why don't you just get into clinical
All
trials? It's
academic.
straight there. Yeah.
And you're right. It's a trap almost. It's the allure of now I have this and it's gonna make me more attractive. Well, I think you just wasted that time and energy on actually getting that experience and trying to break into that role and gaining real world experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's so much we could talk about, and I like there's so much I'd love to go on, but let's go with the last question, which is like futuristic. Obviously you've been in this industry for 20 years, you've been done your own journey, which has been incredible just to hear the tidbits of it. But what would you say you see are the biggest opportunities for clinicians in industry, particularly around like pharma, biotech over the next like 2 to 5 years? Like where should we be focusing our energies and positioning ourselves and getting into whilst the iron is hot or heating up, I should say?
Yes, yes. Well, there are two things with that, right? So the first one are the therapeutic areas.
Yeah.
So rare disease, those gene therapies, CAR T, oncology is always very hot, but there are so many new therapies that are new and coming, and they are just very, very innovative that we need to pay attention. So a lot of the growth is going to happen on those specific therapeutic areas, right? So the new up and
Mhm.
coming. And at the same time, because they are new and upcoming, and there are so many drugs and products that are being developed in those pipelines, that creates positions, right? Needs within either pharma or healthcare. So, for example, I'm seeing a lot. So we're in this transition phase within the industry where we start to see a lot of these gene therapies, by biologics, like high touch therapies. Okay. Now, in response, what pharma is doing is now they want to serve HCPs, they want to serve patients. So there
Yeah.
are now more and more, and I start to see that in this now, roles and positions opening up, not on medical affairs, but on the commercial side. So the commercial side is where the patient support comes in with, okay, follow-ups, patient education. How do we dose this? How do we, educate patients on and HCPs on market access,
Hmm.
reimbursement, especially in the United States. It's the accessing treatment can be quite a convoluted process. So there's a huge need of experts, of people who understand not only the clinical side, but the system as a whole.
Yeah.
So we are uniquely positioned to do that. And not everyone's looking at that. Everyone's looking at medical affairs.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, why is that? Is
And
that
it's
just
more,
like it's just because it's known?
it,
And it seems to be like a good entry point for a lot of clinicians, right?
yeah, and the funny thing is, I'm not even sure it's a good entry point, right?
Interesting.
Because it's so competitive.
Well,
You know,
yeah, it's competitive because everyone knows about it. Because they're like,
it,
okay, I'll do pharma for
yeah,
medical affairs.
Yeah, it's you think, oh, I'm in medical, then it's medical affairs.
Yeah. And there's
Most
like
people
partnering
don't
jobs.
realize that some of the roles that they're vying are actually on the commercial side. So, for example, thought leader liaisons. There's the liaison piece, but that's commercial, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
intersection between science and marketing and strategy. Okay. There are clinical scientists, health scientists. You hear that, and I was like, oh, that must be no, that's purely commercial. And I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are surprised when they see, oh, there are sales quotas and metrics. The whole thing is changing, right? So what we think of commercial with, and I just responded to a post on this by one of the commercial guys. There's like a discussion, I forgot his name, but essentially there is a repositioning and rebranding even within pharma of what commercial stands for.
Mm-hmm.
Before it was more okay, sales, selling, product centric. Now everything is all about patient centric and HCP centric. So it's all
Yeah, and I heard about
part
that.
of
Yeah.
that journey.
Yeah. I even it was today I even heard about that, I think. So we've got a
Yes.
doctor, we haven't asked me anything, and we probably have the same thing. Where, I think they were talking about pharma, but how everything is way more patient, healthcare professional centric. And also, as you said, the value of knowing the system is up there, right? Compared to just the knowledge or the clinical knowledge what you have. It's like that's what they value because it is a real ball ache to sell to healthcare providers, like especially in the public healthcare system. But anyway, we could definitely go on forever. But I really enjoy this just because like we're playing in the same space in the field, and it's so important, especially I think as women, to collaborate in this area. I know it's cross Atlantic, but seeing this like similar patterns as well, is important because I think like as you said, like we're in a crisis, or you said this before the podcast, we're in a crisis time, right? Whereby, the competition is heating up. But saying that, there are so many opportunities, as you said, that are unmet that clinicians need to be looking at rather than all kind of going in for the same thing. So you
Yeah.
really helped to uncover and enlighten us with that. So I want to thank you so much for joining this podcast episode. And again, like if anyone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way of doing so?
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all, Abeyna, for having me in your podcast. I really appreciate it. And we have, I think, a great, great conversation. And I'm sure this is all going to help, a lot of people. To reach out to me, so I am the founder of Talmedica. So you can go on my website. It's www.talmedica.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me over there. I'm always there. So.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Christine. Take care.
Thank you. Pleasure.